Okay, in this video I'm just going to talk through how we recommend our clients use shot pattern. We're going to talk a little bit about the fastest way to input your data into shot pattern and the numbers that are going to be key for you to know. So the first thing to note is there's a couple of things you can do within for shot pattern. You can use shot pattern during the round as part of like a GPS, and it is USGA regulated, so you can actually use this in competition rounds. I'll do a separate video on how to actually use that on the golf course and things to watch out for. The other thing you can do is obviously you can view all of your stats and stuff. So they're two separate things you can do within shot pattern. You can also like preview rounds as well. So you can kind of do your course management and all that stuff. I'm gonna do that in a separate video. Today I'm just gonna simply talk about inputting a round of data into the shot pattern app to put your scores in, get all your data and put everything into the app itself, right? So the first thing to note with this is shot pattern gives you two different ways to do this. It gives you one way, which is while you're playing, you can be inputting your shots as you go. And then you can also do it post-round. We always recommend that you do it post-round, simply because it's sometimes a little bit clunky, can be a little bit distracting. There's just no need to add that complication. So I'm gonna show you the way that we recommend you do it, which is post-round, which therefore means that there's some numbers that you're gonna need to gather during the round. So here is a list of the stats that we want you to note during the round, or actually just the numbers we want you to note down during the round, right? So the first thing is we're always gonna take, if it's par 4 or par 5, we're gonna just write down, or if you remember, obviously all of these, if you can remember them, me and a lot of my clients I work with, we can sometimes just remember a lot of this data. So if you can remember it, you don't need to put it. If you don't remember or you know that you're gonna forget, this is the main thing to write down. First thing is just what club do we use off the tee, right? That's gonna be the most important thing. And that's gonna be the same for all of our par 4s and par 5s. The other number we're gonna need is after our initial tee shot, how far away from the hole were we on that shot? You're gonna remember if you were in the rough, if you were behind a tree, that type of stuff, so don't worry about that. When we get into inputting that, it's gonna make sense. For now, the only information we need is roughly what club we used and how far away from the hole were we after that shot, okay? If it's a par 3, obviously that now becomes that number, which is basically your approach shot number. So when you're going for the green, how far away from the hole were you? If you're playing a par 5 and you lay up, you might have two numbers for that. So you might have the first number, which is how far away from the hole were you after your tee shot, and the second one was how far away from the hole were you after your layup, for example, or your attempted go at the green, okay? The next number we're gonna need is any type of short game number. So it's really useful to kind of get this semi-accurate if you can. So if you are off the green, getting a rough idea of how far away from the hole you are from that point is going to help you out when you go to input the stats. So if you did miss the green, roughly how far away were you? You don't have to exactly laser it, but if you're within kind of 5 and 10 yards, that's going to make a big difference. And then once you're on the green, what is the distance of the first putt? So how far away from the hole were you once you got onto the green? And then anything that's noteworthy with this next putt. So if you left it 10 foot short, that would obviously be quite noteworthy. If you put it to like a foot or 2 foot, it's not gonna make a huge amount of difference, so you don't have to note that down. So what we're gonna see is for every hole that we play, we're gonna have a number which will be how far away from the hole were we, either starting the par 3 or after a tee shot. We're then gonna have a number with how far away from the hole were we once we got on the green, which is our first putt number, and then any extra little bits of data from there for example, chip shots or second putts, okay? So it seems like a lot, but actually when you put onto a scorecard, if you imagine having your own scorecard, which is used only for this, we can obviously put the score in one column if we want to, but essentially within kind of the other playing people, if you think of you had player A, B, C, and D, essentially we're only using up 3 of these columns, which is how far away from the hole were you after the first shot, or how far away was the tee shot, first part, and then maybe one other number. So it really isn't that much you need to write down, and you can easily remember this immediately after the hole, you can just write that in, or it's really good as part of your process when you get to your ball after a tee shot, or when you get on a par 3, just write the number in the book. How far away from the hole were you, write that number down, and then go through your process. So it's really not asking too much information on the golf course, okay? But if you get that minimal data, once you now come to inputting this, it's gonna make your life a lot easier, okay? So the first thing we're gonna do is go to that input setting. So you're just gonna go to rounds and then go to add round, type in the name of the course. So we'll do Stevenage Golf Club, which is where the studio is based. Select the type of round, all that stuff, and then we click begin. So what you'll realize is the first thing it'll get you to do is put where the hole was. Now I didn't tell you to write down where the hole was because chances are if you're doing this immediately after the round, you're gonna remember. So let's just put where the pin was. Let's just say it was here. The next thing is gonna be where you teed off from. Again, it doesn't matter too much. Most places, the tee box is not gonna be huge. It's gonna be negligible, right? So we just dump wherever roughly we were. And again, if you don't remember, just put the middle, right? Just put the middle of the tee box. It really doesn't make so much difference. So the first thing it's gonna ask you to then do is say where your target line was for that tee shot. So it's really important with this that we realize the difference between target and alignment. So this is actually where you were trying to get the golf ball to finish. Okay, so where were you trying to finish the golf ball? So for most people, most of the time, they're going to be trying to finish the golf ball in the middle of the fairway. That's not always the case. Sometimes we want to be on the right-hand side of the fairway. Sometimes we actually pick a target that's actually right rough because that allows for trouble. But you'll have your target of where you're trying to finish that golf ball for that shot. And that's the first number it's going to ask us. So we just drag the aim around, and all you're going to do is drop it in. So let's say, for example, if I was trying to hit this 270 yards down the middle of the fairway, that would be my select target. The next number it's going to get you to put in, you can see it's put a little dartboard there. The next number is where this actually finished, right? Now, notice how I didn't actually ask you to see how far your shot went. The reason for that is absolutely irrelevant, because the second number at the top of the screen here, you can see this as it goes to there, 120. That's how far away from that pin that we've set it is. So let's say, for example, I hit that tee shot and I knew that I was in the left rough and I was 130 yards away from the pin. All I'll do is I'll drag this to 130 yards into the left rough, and then I know that that drive went 249 yards, right? That will then be my point. I then select that. Now, the next thing it's going to ask me to do is actually really, really important. And again, I didn't ask you to write this down because you're going to remember it. We obviously picked the club that we wanted to do. We remember that we say we hit driver. Now, what's really important is you can see here that you saw that I dragged that into the left rough, and I was intentional in putting that in the left rough, but the ending lie has been picked up as fairway. It's just sometimes that the map doesn't 100% know if it's rough, fairway, thick rough, whatever it is. So always make sure that you put down what the ending lie was. What that is where the ball finished. So this ball finished in the left rough, and therefore I need to put ending lie and I need to put rough. And the reason why that's so important is that's going to put my driving stats down slightly, but it's then going to therefore make sure that my approach play coming from the rough is accurate. So it's obviously a harder shot coming from the rough than it is from the fairway. So my approach play therefore will have a little bit more leniency in its strokes gained. So it's really important that we put that number in. So we put ending line rough, we save the shot, and then it'll move on to my approach shot. So now my approach shot, let's say for example, if I was aiming at the pin, I would put it here. If I was aiming a little bit left of the pin, I would put it here. So let's say for example, I was aiming 5 foot left of this pin, and that's where I was trying to finish it for whatever reason. Notice here how we're really interested in where you were aiming at this point as well, right? So if I aimed at this pin and missed it to the right, that would be useful information for me. If I aimed 5 foot left of this pin and missed it left, that would also be useful information for us. So when we're reviewing your round, we can see your exact targets and where it finished as well. So let's say I put this as 5 foot. Again, this is where I wanted it to finish, not where I was aiming, where I wanted to finish. 5 foot left of target. And let's say I hit it short right, and I know from my stats that I wrote down, I was around 30 foot from the pin. So I drag it to 30 foot. I knew I was short right, 30 foot, and I click save. It's then going to ask me what club I used to hit that. Let's say, for example, I hit a, I don't know, pitching wedge. It's going to say ending lie was on the green. Good, I can save that shot. And now we move on to the putting. So if I didn't have anything else written down for that, and I knew that I'd made a 4, then I can just drag this around. I probably had a tap in from a foot. Oh, there you go, tap in, 1 foot, go in the hole, off I go. So there we've simply just put the stats in from the numbers that we had. Now, if let's say, for example, on this one, I wasn't 100% sure whether the hole was kind of back right or mid right. You'll notice here how it kind of doesn't really make any difference, because if I put it back right, all I'm going to do is I know how far away from it was that I teed off. So if I got that slightly wrong, all that's going to do is drag the tee shot further forward a little bit. As long as I know how far away from the hole I was in the end, it's all going to even out. Okay, so you don't have to be too specific on exactly where the pin was and exactly all those locations. Okay, so I'll do that all the way through. And if you can go through it fast, for example, if I finish this par 3, the only thing else to note is as I put this par 3 in, if I put the pin there, in the top left-hand side, you've obviously got your number of how far away that hole was. So if I knew that that pin was 160 yards and I zapped it at 160 yards, I can also drag the tee shot to 160 yards and then mark that, and that would make sure that that was accurate. Let's say, for example, I knew I hit it to 15 foot, it was just short. Let's say it was there, and I can then put my numbers in, okay? So that's the fastest way for you to input data after the round. It's really important that once you have these numbers and you have the scorecard for these numbers in, it's so fast just to input this data in. Obviously, I talked you through that really slowly. We can get down to doing this within 10 minutes, right? So you can actually do all 18 holes within 10 minutes. It's a really good mental reflection. It makes sure that all the data is fully accurate, and it also means as coaches, we can go in and see what were you aiming at, where did it finish, and see all your strategy and course management issues as well, okay? So hopefully that's clarified some questions you had on how to input shot pattern data. Hopefully that clarified it, and I'll see you in the next video. We're going to start talking about using this on course as well.